What's up, Strike Team, and welcome back to another episode of Strike Team Official. And today we are going to revisit what we talked about in my last martial art video, which is why I do not believe all martial art systems are necessarily created equal. And I had kind of broken down a tier list with 4 different attributes, really to kind of explain what differentiates different martial art styles to me. And so in this video, we're going to go over a group of martial art systems that I'm relatively familiar with, and kind of break down where I would put them within the tier system so that you can better understand how this tier system works. Okay, so let's take a quick review of the tiers and how they work. So we are judging each of these systems based on how well they deliver on their promise of what they're supposed to teach you. Okay, so what is that martial art supposed to teach you? And does it teach the average practitioner well? We're judging the average practitioner, not the exceptions to the rule. Okay, so is the average practitioner actually trained in such a way in which they're skilled in the style, and can they use the techniques against a non-resisting opponent? Okay, so a core or base system would promise to teach you a certain skill set that the average practitioner who's taking it seriously is actually able to then apply this skill set against a non-resisting opponent, and not just in competition. I do factor in competition, but we're also looking heavily at self-defense. Okay? And now a secondary and auxiliary system is the level where a decent number of practitioners could probably use it, but everybody can't. Okay, so we're looking at something where maybe 50, 60%, could even be less, somewhere around there, of practitioners could actually use it against a non-resisting opponent, but the others really couldn't. And usually that comes down to training methods and just maybe a lack of pressure testing of certain techniques. The third one would be specialty and support systems. These are systems that are very niche, so maybe you are maybe you're a specialty school, like you specialize in one specific aspect of fighting, so it's not very good in full-on self-defense situations, but it still has its uses, it still has benefits, so it's still like something I consider a legitimate martial art to learn. Okay, and then you have the mostly trash systems where pretty much, in my opinion, learning those martial arts are predominantly, I hate to say this, but like if you're looking for it from a self-defense aspect, predominantly maybe a bit of a waste of time. Okay, so we're going to go through these. Again, I want to point out that as I put these martial arts into each of these tiers, there are always exceptions, and the higher they are on this tier, the more exceptions they're going to be. So core and base systems won't need any exceptions, but the secondary and auxiliary systems are going to have a decent number of exceptions to the rule. Support and specialty systems should have a few. Trash systems should have 0. There should be no exceptions because the martial art in and of itself, I'm actually saying the martial arts techniques taught are pretty much not useful at all in a self-defense situation. So let's go through this real quickly. We're going to go one at a time. I'm going to start off with boxing, which is a really easy one. I actually discussed this in the previous video where I went into deeper depth about the definitions of each of these categories. Boxing promises to teach you how to use your hands to fight. Okay, it says you're going to be able to use these 2 fists and beat somebody up. And if you watch videos of street fights, most of them are all hands. A boxer has a significant advantage in that situation. And the average person who is training boxing seriously, especially if they're competing in boxing, can use it, obviously, against a non-resisting opponent. Boxing, obviously, has high-level competition, which in turn gives it very high-level pressure testing, which makes it high on the list. One thing you're going to notice as we keep going is the more pressure tested a system is, the higher it's going to rank. Okay, so let's go to the next one here. We're not going to do this in order necessarily. We're just going to go through them in general. But right after boxing, oh Jesus, I should have mixed these up a bit more. We have wrestling. Wrestling is another one that I think is a pretty easy one to place. I would also put wrestling up here in the core and base systems. I actually did a review of another YouTuber's video a while back where he claimed that wrestling was the best style for self-defense. I don't know if I fully agree with that, but I will say wrestling has a very high level of average practitioners, probably the highest of any martial art. Most practitioners of wrestling are very in shape, very athletic. They train hard, relatively skilled. They pretty much all compete, like every single one. So pressure testing is very, very high. On top of that, wrestling gives you the ability to decide where the fight takes place. Is the fight going to be standing up where you're punching and kicking? Are you going to be able to take somebody to the ground and hold them there? If you're looking from a more self-defense aspect where maybe you don't want to hurt somebody, wrestling will give you the ability to hold somebody on the ground for long periods of time if necessary. You can also body slam somebody on the submit if necessary, which could end a fight. And wrestlers have some of the highest level of grit and determination of any martial artist I've ever seen. And so I would put wrestling relatively high on this list. I think anyone who's a pure striker, if you don't have any ground game and a wrestler with high level wrestling decides to take you down, you're going to the ground. And then they're just going to, ground and pound you. Wrestling's a very high level martial art for that reason. So I would put wrestling extremely high on the list. Honestly, wrestling overall for, taking the promise of what wrestling promises to teach you and actually delivering, wrestling might be number one. If I had an S tier, I'd put wrestling in S tier. So since we just did some grappling, let's stay in that grappling vein. Let's look at the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. So I separated these specifically because I'm looking at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as pure sport Jiu-Jitsu, sort of like the Jiu-Jitsu that's training for competing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitions, in comparison to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, which has a higher emphasis on defeating any martial art. Dealing with a boxer, taking him down and choking him out, or someone who's able to punch and ground and pound you and still being able to deal with that. Gracie Jiu-Jitsu kind of has the whole idea of being able to fight against anybody. And while I would say both of these martial arts deliver on what they promise to teach you, I do think sports Jiu-Jitsu is inferior to the original Gracie Jiu-Jitsu thought process. Specifically because they're not training to deal with, that guy who's also punching and elbowing while you're trying to submit him, the guy throwing kicks at you. They're not preparing for that level of a resisting opponent. And again, a lot of sports jiu-jitsu schools do teach for that because they know they're dealing with people who are also training for MMA. But I might say that that's closer to the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu philosophy if you're teaching and preparing for strikes and things like that. So for that reason, I would actually take sports Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We're going to use this one for sport Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I would actually put it in a secondary or auxiliary system. Even when you look at the UFC, you have pure Jiu-Jitsu guys who are not doing nearly as good as they used to because they're doing this sports Jiu-Jitsu specialty, and it's not working as well when those punches are flying. But if you mix, say you were training at a purely sports jiu-jitsu gym, but then you learned some wrestling or some boxing, and you mix it together, I do think you could fix a lot of those holes. That's one of the things with the secondary and auxiliary systems, is if you mix them with a core base system, you're going to have a phenomenal fighter. That is something I spoke about more in the original video. That being said, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu prepares you more for somebody striking. I actually know some Gracie Jiu-Jitsu schools that teach within the foundation of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu actually teaches you basic strikes so you're prepared for them and can throw them yourself, as well as being able to deal with those strikes coming from the ground and things like that. So Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, while preparing you and being able to help you as a Jiu-Jitsu practitioner in Jiu-Jitsu competitions, it's much better for self-defense. And for that reason, I will consider a core base system. Right, so sports jiu-jitsu is still good, especially for its sport, but it's in the secondary system because I wouldn't put it as high for self-defense. But Gracie Jiu-Jitsu has both, so I'm going to put that in the core and base systems. Okay, next one, karate. Ooh, this is fun. Karate, as you know, is the martial art that made me serious about martial arts. It's the martial art love of my life, karate and Muay Thai. I personally am a Ueshido karate practitioner, but I also do Shorin as well. Let's see. I actually think if we're going to do karate, I should bring some other karates up here as well. Yeah, here we go. I have Kyokushin, karate up here. I think I had another one. I have Kempo karate. Ooh, I have a bunch. I'm relatively more knowledgeable about karate than other things, so I have multiple versions on here. Did I not also have... I swear I had Kudo up here. Am I blind? I don't see it. All right, here we go. Found Kudo. All right, so I have 4 different tabs for karate here. These are how I separated them out. We have karate here with just the black belt. I consider that traditional Okinawan karate, like what I do, which is Weishido, Shorin-ryu, Isshin-ryu, whatever, Goju. Then we have Kyokushin karate. I gave that its own section because it is actually has a nickname as the strongest karate. I don't know if I'd agree with that when we go through this whole thing. But it is very well known for how hard the training is in comparison to other traditional styles. So I wanted to give that something separate. Then I have Kempo karate here, specifically because Kempo karate is almost more kung fu-y in a way, based on its history. We're talking specifically like Ed Parker's stuff. And then we have Kudo here as well. Now, Kudo karate is a very, very, I would say almost niche. Many people don't know about it, but a very, very special form of karate that we'll get to as well. So let's start off here with traditional Okinawan karate, like with what I train. I think traditional Okinawan karate has a large amount of potential. There's a lot of techniques within the kata and within the kihon that we practice, but we don't drill to that high of a level. We do have a competition style with point sparring. And while you can go to a school that teaches point sparring, and you can become good at point sparring isn't always the best to be used against a fully non-resisting opponent in a self-defense situation. Now, there's obviously exceptions to that rule. Raymond Daniels, Stephen Thompson. Actually, he wasn't point sparring. I take that one back. Raymond Daniels, Michael Venom Page, guys like that who make it work. And actually, even Stephen Thompson has sports, point sparring movement, even though I know he wasn't necessarily doing that style. And Conor McGregor has similar movement too. But if you're going to a school that is teaching you heavily that point sparring style, in my experience, those schools actually teach you the true self-defense aspects within karate even less because they're not focused on it. And schools that do teach the self-defense style of karate and actually go deep into the applications of the kata, in my experience, the large majority aren't doing enough pressure testing. That is changing. There are a lot of groups out there who are actively trying to fix it. If you follow my channel, you might actually be from one of those schools. And for those people, I would probably put you guys a bit higher. But because we're doing averages here, and the average karate practitioner, I do not think is skilled enough to use their karate techniques against a non-resisting opponent because of how it's taught, with lack of pressure testing, lack of drilling, spending more time on kata than kata applications itself, things like that. I'm actually going to put karate in the secondary or auxiliary systems. Specifically, because if you have someone who's used to full contact competition, say you have a boxer who then learns the karate applications, they might be able to pull them off and use them all because they have an understanding of pressure. But a pure karate person is on average not able to do that just because of the training styles in which we do in karate currently, which I'm hoping changes in the future. I do want to give a quick shout out really quick to Noah of Karate Obsession, because I know he is working on putting together a karate pressure testing like sport competition style thing. So a sport competition where karate practitioners can actually use the full range of kata techniques, including the grappling, the throws, the trapping, everything in karate, in a situation where you're competing against another resisting opponent and actually bringing real pressure testing into karate. And if he's able to do that, karate will definitely bounce up into the base systems. So I want to give a shout out for him because I know he is actively working to change that, but that's still a couple years down the line. So we'll see how karate goes along in the future. But for right now, I'm happy to put it in the secondary or auxiliary systems. We also have Kyokushin Karate, which is, like I said, has a nickname as the strongest karate. Kyokushin Karate is known for its extremely strong, to the body contact sparring. It's full contact a lot of times, no shin pads, no gloves. You just got to wail on that person's body. You can kick to the head, but you can't punch to the head. Okay, but you will get knockouts. You have gotten some fantastic fighters. Also, Kyokushin Karate is the foundation for kickboxing as well, which we'll get to later, but kickboxing is a very practical martial art. So the reason that, from my understanding about why they didn't want to do head punches in Kyokushin Karate had to do with fear of injuries and also some cultural differences here in Japan at the time. But, this is a tough one. It's like Kyokushin Karate doesn't allow punches to the head, but it's a tough, hard style. But again, I put wrestling and Gracie Jiu-Jitsu up there. And if I'm being fair, yeah, that would make Kyokushin Karate would count as a core-based system. Okay? Because, yes, they don't allow punches to the head, so there is a very glaring weakness. But overall, when connected to what else is up on that list, it teaches grit. It teaches how to deal with getting hit for real, getting kicked for real, because you can get kicked in the head, dealing with a real resisting opponent. And obviously, in a self-defense situation, you're going to have to make some adjustments to protect your head. But I do think, especially against a non-trained opponent, a Kyokushin Karate guy would destroy an average dude on the street who's not overly skilled, not trained. So I will give Kyokushin Karate that core, even though it's like barely there. I almost want to give it secondary because of the lack of headshots. I almost want to give it secondary, but I'm going to give it core-based system. I am. Oh, there's also a decent number of UFC fighters who have Kyokushin Karate as their base, like GSP. All right, next one, Kempo Karate. Kempo Karate, Ed Parker's style, almost a bit more kung fu-ish than actual karate-ish. I'm not as well versed on its history, but I have actually, I have a couple friends who have taken it. I've seen demonstrations. I've watched some classes. And I've seen them spar. Their sparring seems to be the same as the kind of point sparring karate style, and their training methods have the same flaws I would give to a lot of karate. Focus on, forms or prearranged attacks, not enough practice against a fully resisting opponent, or even a semi-resisting opponent. A lot of the whole, I'm going to hold my arm out, and when my arm's in the air, I'm going to do 20 moves around your arm type situation, which is good at teaching you principles, but not good at teaching you how to deal with real pressure. And so for that reason, the lack of active pressure testing or pressure testing at a high level, I would probably put Kempo Karate still in the secondary auxiliary systems. There will be a decent number of exceptions when it comes to practitioners, but I do not think on average they would be on the same skill level as someone in that core or base systems just because of the training methodology. The next one, this will be fun for those who don't know about this martial art, Kudo Karate. Okay, now Kudo Karate is pretty much karate's attempt at MMA. Okay, you take these Kyokushin ideals of full contact blasting each other, but they don't like getting hit in the face, so they put on headgear and then they allow headshots. Okay, that's Kudo Karate. It's Kyokushin with punches to the face. Oh, why is Kyokushin a secondary? I must have knocked that down at some point. Kyokushin should be in core-based systems. My bad. But Kudo is like Kyokushin, but with the punches to the face, but they also do grappling. Okay? Kudo will do rounds on the ground where they're actually grappling with each other. It's very similar to just full-on MMA. It gives you an opportunity to learn everything. And it's done against a fully resisting opponent, training for competition. Even if you're doing it kind of for fun, you're learning the ideals of how to compete against somebody who's trying to fight and punch you and knock you back and knock you out while you're trying to knock them out. That is the highest level of pressure testing you can get. So Kudo Karate is definitely going to go up here in the core-based systems. I have a lot of love for it. I wish there was an area closer to me so I could actually learn a bit of it myself. But it's an all-around complete martial arts system, and I like it a lot. All right, for the next one here, let's go over capoeira. Okay, the Brazilian kicking, dancing martial arts style. I love training this martial art. It is so much fun. I haven't done it a lot. I've taken a few classes. I've always had a blast. The music, the movement, it's so athletic. It's powerful. The kicks are dynamic and strong. It's a very, very fun martial art to do. A great way to get in shape. I know at my school, my Muay Thai school back in America, they started bringing a capoeira guy in to teach some fancy kicks. I love the martial arts style. That being said, I do also have to be realistic. It's a very niche style when it comes to its specialties. It really only uses its legs, like at all. Very, very powerful leg strikes. But there's also, not just is there like no pressure testing, there's also no real sparring. I mean, you have the dance movement and whatnot, which is an athletic, fun thing to do, but it's not the same as a sparring match. You know, now that being said, a guy who understands pressure and does capoeira can kick your head off, right? So I'm not saying it's not a useful martial art and there aren't going to be some crazy exceptions. I'm pretty sure I saw a video of an MMA fighter using capoeira move to knock somebody out. I'm pretty sure I saw that. If I did, I'll add the video into here somewhere. But it still isn't, the style isn't well-rounded enough for me to say the average practitioner has a great chance against a non-resisting opponent, especially, since it doesn't compete pretty much at all. And so while it's a great martial art, it's a fun martial art to learn, you would definitely need to mix it with another martial arts system to really be, useful for self-defense. So say a guy did capoeira but also learned boxing type situation. But for that reason, capoeira will actually be our first one here in the support and specialty systems. Okay? Because I don't think self-defense wise it's great by itself, but if you add it into something, it'll be very useful. There's a lot of useful techniques in capoeira. This is very fun. Okay, next one I'm going to touch on is Hapkido. Okay, Hapkido. It's another tough one. Hapkido, depending on where you train, there's a lot of different ways you could look at it, depending on who your instructors are, which I guess is true for all the martial arts on here. But it's another Korean martial arts system. It has the punches and the kicks that you'd expect, especially the kicks out of Korea. But it also has a lot of grappling techniques and throws and joint locks and things like that. That being said, in my experience, I don't know many Hapkido practitioners that can use their techniques against a non-resisting opponent that aren't also highly skilled in another martial art. Like one of the guys I would consider to be skilled in Hapkido, who I respect a lot, is also a Muay Thai instructor. They're always mixed with something. I just feel like when you look at Hapkido and their training methods, it's not done in such a way where the practitioner is going to be very good against somebody with pressure. I also think Hapkido has a fair number of techniques that I would consider to be more on, my phone's going off, more on the impractical side. Not all of them. There's a lot of good stuff in there. But I just wouldn't, Hapkido is definitely not my favorite for those reasons. I think the average quality of martial art practitioner in Hapkido when it comes to fighting, I would put that lower than karate and Kempo karate as well, probably. But maybe around Kempo karate area. Oh, this is a tough one. I'm stuck. I should have done this video with somebody else so I could bounce some ideas off of them. That would have been easier. I'm going to put it in secondary, but it's close to being support special systems only. The reason I'm going to put it in secondary is Hapkido has such a wide variety of techniques that if someone, like I said, anything in secondary auxiliary systems, when mixed with another martial art, especially in the core base system area, would become pretty useful. And I think like Hapkido has so many, such a wide variety of techniques that if a wrestler or a boxing guy or a Kyokushin karate guy who has an idea of pressure was able to learn the Hapkido moves and techniques, that they might actually be able to apply a decent number of them. And so for that reason, I'll put it in secondary and auxiliary systems, but I almost want to put it in support. That's a tough one. I might change that later, but for right now, I'll put it in secondary auxiliary systems. Next one on the list, Kaju Kimbo. This system has another kind of special place in my heart. The first martial art I ever did was called One Hop Kundo. It's actually a version of Kaju Kimbo. Kaju Kimbo stands for karate. Ju is boxing. Ki is Kempo. And Bo is, Kaju Kimbo. Karate, Judo, Kempo, and boxing. Yeah. And it's a Hawaiian system, putting them all together, sort of like that whole MMA thought process as well. And again, this varies a lot school to school. You have some Kaju Kimbo systems that are more focused on actual combat and fighting and pressure testing, and some that are honestly a bit more kung fu-y. And I would definitely put in the secondary, if not all the way down to the support system. But again, I'm going to try and look at it on the average. And at least in my experience, a lot of the Kaju Kimbo guys I know in their schools do pressure test heavily. They fight and spar almost to the level of like MMA, maybe without takedowns. Some even add the takedowns. And they do a lot of real pressure testing in a lot of Kaju Kimbo schools. Again, this one will vary school to school. Some Kaju Kimbo places, like I said before, will be more kung fu-y. I'm going to put it in the core and base systems, specifically because of my personal experience. My personal experience of Kaju Kimbo schools I've seen do a lot of real sparring. As a matter of fact, of maybe the 5 I've been to, 4 of them have boxing rings in their school. Like, they pressure test like MMA fighters. That being said, where I learned my style was definitely more on the kung fu-y, flowy side. We did some point sparring, but not full contact, where I would actually put it in a secondary auxiliary system. So because of personal experience, I'm going to put it in core and base systems, but that may not be the overall experience for everyone watching this video. And maybe it should be dropped down the list. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about Kaju Kimbo. Now we have Aikido. Woo! Aikido's a tough one, especially as a guy. And I say that because I actually think Aikido might be more useful if you are a woman, specifically because of how females are attacked in society. Aikido promises or says it can teach you how to defeat an opponent, often either without hurting them or with minimal effort, and doing things that seem fanciful, like taking a punch and throwing them through the air and flipping them, or having 5 opponents come in and grab your wrist and throwing them all like it's magic. Some crazy stuff comes out of Aikido. And even the less crazy things, just like the ability to manipulate and move people with minimum effort, against a fully resisting opponent, it'd be real hard. Like, I'm going to be honest, I've never met an Aikido practitioner in my entire life who's been able to successfully use Aikido in a situation where someone's resisting, unless they are a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and they're not doing it from like a stand-up flowy position. They're doing it from a position where you're already like tangled up and grappling. Dogs barking outside. Where you're already tangled up and grappling. The Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt might grab your wrist and do some Aikido thing from there. But that's just taking the Aikido principles of the wrist locks and the joint locks, but applying them in a way that's not even taught in Aikido. I would say Aikido, when it comes to what it's promising to teach you by itself, I hate to say this, guys, but it fails pretty hard. I'm going to put it in mostly trash. It's not total trash, because like I said, a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu can take something he learned in Aikido and maybe apply it on you on the ground or something. So there are some principles there that work. I remember talking to one of my coaches out here about how Aikido gives you great understanding of positioning and where your body should be in respect to your opponent. But that being said, you can learn that from so many other martial arts with a lot less foo-foo. So I won't call it total trash, but I'm going to call it like 90% trash. I'm just being honest. That's what I'm putting Aikido. I'm sorry. Next one, why do I have two of these? That's an accident. I have two of them. I'm only going to use one. Baji Quan. Baji Quan is, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but it is a Chinese Kung Fu style. And it is used a lot of strong, stable stances, a lot of elbow strikes, and a lot of techniques that, from watching, from what I've seen, actually seem relatively useful and practical if you apply them properly. I haven't had a chance to work with a Baji Quan expert myself, but I've seen, like I said, demonstrations, videos. I went up and looked at some classes and watched some things, and I was actually relatively impressed with the martial arts system. I do like it. My issue with it, again, is extreme lack of pressure testing, from my understanding from the people I've talked to, extreme lack of pressure testing, and lack of competition. And without that, I can only say the average practitioner skill level be relatively low. I've met a few practitioners, very good understanding of the techniques, but once again, low actual application, low actual ability of applying it against resistance. I would put it as, above Capoeira, because Capoeira is a bit more niche, but they have a lot of the same issues. I would still, I don't think it deserves to be in the area of like karate and Hapkido and things. I think I would actually put Baji Quan back in support and specialty systems as well. Specifically due to lack of pressure testing and lack of sparring. Again, you might be at a school that does it differently. Maybe it's just because I have a relatively smaller amount of personal experience with this system. But in my experience, from what I've seen, I would put it there. That being said, I actually do like this system a lot. I think there's probably a lot of very useful techniques in it. And I think with a proper training methodology, it would actually boost up much higher on this list. But right now, I think support specialty systems is a good place to put Baji Quan. But if you guys disagree, and maybe you are someone who trains in Baji Quan and would like to talk about it and maybe explain why it should be higher on this list, maybe explain some deep applications of the kata, I would love to, because I've looked at it and I'm personally very interested in the system. So please let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Next, we have Chi. I'm gonna touch magic chi based powers later. I think we all know where that's going. We'll touch that later. This shouldn't be. That's a little mistake. Hungar. Okay. Hungar is another strong-rooted Chinese system. It has a lot of very useful techniques in it. I went to a seminar on it recently and was extremely impressed by the techniques. Very, very practical, very useful. After speaking to the expert there and then looking at some of the kata, I was able to kind of understand what these applications might be meant for. And again, I liked it a lot. For those of you who have seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, Hungar is the base of the earthbending style, and Avatar: The Last Airbender as well. And I like it. Again, though, I think it suffers a lot on average for what you get with a lot of Kung Fu schools, which is the pressure testing and the competition on a high level. But, it does have a lot of really useful techniques in it. Again, a tough one, because I'm making this judgment off of personal experience. And while I think Hung Gar has a large variety of practical and useful techniques within the system, if trained right, on average, I just don't see a high level of skill out of the practitioners. While I do understand that there are techniques in Hung Gar that are extremely practical, I just do not know many practitioners of that system who can use it in a pressure tested situation. And so for that reason, I am going to put it in the specialty support system area. Again, this more has to do with the training methodologies that are common within the system than the actual techniques that are within the system itself. Because there are a lot of very useful things in the karate system itself. Next one. We are going to touch on Jeet Kune. Is that Jeet Kune Do? Yeah, Jeet Kune Do. Bruce Lee's martial arts system. This is funny because I actually think Jeet Kune Do as a martial arts system is not what Bruce Lee wanted it to be at all. I have a very love-hate relationship with it. There are some parts of Jeet Kune Do when I've seen practitioners train that I like, and some stuff that I'm just like, what are you guys doing? This doesn't make any sense. But when I look at Jeet Kune Do, I will say a lot of these guys spar. A lot of these guys will spar with resistance. I know Jeet Kune Do practitioners who have hopped up and gone to full contact competitions to really push themselves. And I also know Jeet Kune Do schools that are total garbage and they don't do that at all. So this is a tough one. It's stuck between core-based systems and secondary auxiliary systems. I'm going to put it in secondary and auxiliary systems, but I recognize there is a relatively high amount of exceptions on Jeet Kune Do because there are a lot of schools that do train people to actually compete against people who are resisting, as in like active sparring against resisting, like with boxing gloves on or MMA gloves on, and really going out there and putting in real sparring work. I do recognize those schools exist. So this is very much on the edge between core and secondary systems, but there's just too many Jeet Kune Do schools out there that are total garbage, in my opinion, for me to put it any higher. Which is now going to question where I put Kajukenbo, because they have a similar issue. But I'm gonna hold it there. I think Kajukenbo's a bit better off in general. So I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep it where I have it. All right. Next one, we're gonna touch this to Jiu-Jitsu. Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, not Brazilian or Gracie, but Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. This system is interesting because it's historically extremely important. So many martial arts styles that are famous now have a history that can be traced back, a lineage that can be traced back to some form of Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. Japanese Jiu-Jitsu being a precursor to Judo, which led to all the forms of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, be Gracie, sports, all the stuff we're not even mentioning in this video, 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, Guerrilla Jiu-Jitsu. Also, it has connections that go down into the karate area, connections that end up into the Aikido area. Japanese Jiu-Jitsu is a foundational system of a lot of martial arts. And I trained it a little bit as a kid. I did a couple months training it as well. It is another one of those systems that has a lot of useful techniques, and it also varies greatly. There's multiple styles of Japanese Jiu-Jitsu as I say this. There's a bunch of systems of Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, and they're all going to vary widely depending on who you're training with and what style it is. That being said, they all kind of fall into having these similar issues that you get a lot with the older traditional systems, like you got it with Hung Gar and Baji Quan, and you're going to get it now with Jiu-Jitsu, is just the lack of pressure testing. Currently, when you're doing these ancient martial arts styles, people just don't seem to pressure test their system against resisting opponents nearly as much as other systems do. And it's something I've seen consistently within that Japanese Jiu-Jitsu world. I'm not saying the techniques don't work. A lot of the techniques will work. But some of the techniques, I will say straight up, are about as useful as Aikido techniques. which is not very useful, especially if someone's not swinging a big sword at you, which doesn't happen nowadays. So for that reason, I'm going to put Japanese Jiu-Jitsu down here in the support and specialty systems as well. Because while I do think they have a lot of useful techniques and that you can learn, I think it would be much more useful if you were to mix it with a core or base system than do it by itself. You know? So yeah, I'm going to put Japanese Jiu-Jitsu there. Alright guys, I gotta hop back in real quick. I am in the middle of editing this video, and I do think I actually made a mistake with Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. I think I should actually be boosting it up to the second tier and not putting it into the third. My own personal experiences training the system are relatively negative, and I think I might be letting my personal experience be swaying what the actual average might be. Well, I do think it's not trained in the same kind of, like, say, environment as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or even Judo or something like that, where it's like competition level or fully resisting opponent. I think my comparison to Aikido is overall incorrect. And I think it would be a better spot to kind of put it in that number 2 category, because I do think it could use a bit more, a bit higher level of resistance training in some areas. And I do think there are a lot of BS schools that kind of teach it almost Aikido style, which brings that average down. But I do think the techniques are good enough, and there are places with a high enough skill level that I should definitely boost it up to the second tier. So I'm not going to go back and re-edit the whole video. So it's going to be in that third tier spot, but no, that is incorrect. I do think it should be up there in that second tier. And that will actually lead us right here into Judo. Judo is, I think, almost underrated. I don't think people understand how devastating a judo throw will be in a self-defense situation on the street. If you are attacking someone and they're a judo black belt or a judo competitor, and you have a jacket or a shirt, or even without, they can do it without grabbing something, and they flip you onto the cement, you're done. And the level of skill with some of these guys, I remember I was doing some training with I think he's at least a 6th, 7th degree. He has the coral belt. He's up there, right? And he's an older guy, and he kept, every time I tried to walk forward, I'd fall down. His ability to sweep me was just so next level. But the average practitioner in there, all of them have the ability to throw somebody. They're all pretty tough, especially here in Japan, where judo is like a high school sport, kind of like wrestling. They're very, very skilled at what they do. And in a self-defense situation, which is funny because judo was not designed for self-defense, it was designed for sport. But I actually think in a self-defense situation, judo would be highly useful, because if someone's blitzing you or attacking you, it's very easy, just like, you grab. And now if the judo guy is there and he grabs you, you're dead. You're just dead. And so I'm going to put judo up here in the core or base systems, because I think for competition, judo has its own competition style. It promises to teach you to be good at its competition, and it achieves that. And then it is good at self-defense almost on accident. Okay? Because like I said, judo is not even designed as a self-defense system. It just happens to be great at it. And so I would actually put judo in the core or base systems area. And we're going to move here to Glory Kickboxing. Oh. No, this is just kickboxing in general. My bad. I just used the Glory sign. Kickboxing in general. That could be Japanese kickboxing, Glory kickboxing. You know, I even put in American kickboxing into that loop, into that bit, even though American kickboxing is very different from the other two. Kickboxing, punching, kicking, a lot of the case knees. You have a competition style against a fully resisting opponent. Obviously, if boxing made it to the core base systems, kickboxing is going to make it to the core base systems. That's pretty clear. A guy tries to fight you in the street, you square up. You're a kickboxer. He's not a kickboxer. He's not trained. You're trained. It's game over. And on average, if someone is going to learn kickboxing and they're not using it purely for cardio, okay, you're not going to like a cardio kickboxing place, but you're learning to actually drill and train it, you're going to have a certain level of skill. You've probably sparred, even if it's just for fun, so you have an idea of real pressure. So I'm definitely going to give that to kickboxing up in the core-based systems. All right, next one, Krav Maga. Now, I have a very interesting love-hate relationship again with Krav Maga. I've seen some practitioners that are very good, and I've seen a lot of practitioners that are garbage. I also think there's a big disconnect between what's taught in Israel as a self-defense, or not self-defense, as a tool for teaching aggression and martial principles to its military, compared to what's taught here in America, which has a lot of schools that are, if I'm going to be honest with you, just total crap. Okay, I've seen Krav Maga is supposed to teach or take the most practical aspects of different martial arts, bring them together, use it as a way to teach martial arts to the Israeli military, and help them understand aggression and fighting. And from an Israeli military perspective, Krav Maga is almost more of a mindset of aggression than like a full martial arts system, like how we look at like a karate or a Brazilian jiu-jitsu. That being said, I've seen stuff here where you have Krav Maga experts in America teaching you Tiger Claw style within the Krav Maga stuff, which is like, I'm pretty sure it's not a real thing from like Israel at all. Like they just made that up. Like just, I've seen some craziness. I think Krav Maga has been hit probably harder than but harder than many systems with the McDojo virus, as you might say. Schools that don't have any pressure testing at all, schools that are teaching BS techniques are just like growing shots all day, but very, very little real ability. That being said, I know a Krav Maga group out in LA who not just are they training for real, but they're competing in full contact fights with Krav Maga training. So it's like, there's a huge disparity. You have some guys who are out here using it like a core-based system 100%, but a lot of guys who are learning it and getting absolute BS from it because it's been hit heavily by this McDojo virus. And because of that, honestly, it makes it really, really complicated because I think the guys who are total BS are not total BS, but are teaching these really offlandish versions, especially in the United States, that are barely like the original system out in Israel. And because even in Israel, it's more, like I said, a thought process of aggression. I would be willing to put it in the support specialty systems because of how that common Krav Maga practitioner is not that great. But there are also some schools who are using it to the point where their guys are doing MMA fights, which would automatically put it in core-based systems as far as I'm concerned. So because of that, I'm going to put it right here smack dab in the middle as a secondary auxiliary system, right between both. Because, like I said, there are some Krav Maga guys who can really fight, but I do think the large majority of them are probably trash. But the ones who can really fight are pretty darn good. Yeah, I think I'm happy putting it there. Secondary auxiliary system area. Next one. Oh, Kyushu Jutsu. Pressure point martial arts is what this is. Martial arts in general, I named a specific one, but in general, we're talking any martial art that focuses on pressure points as a way to take down your opponent. Pressure points can work. Vital spots obviously work. Every martial art trains some kind of vital spot. And pressure points do exist and they can work. The issue is the level of accuracy needed to land a pressure point shot against somebody who is actively resisting is very, very hard. And on top of that, many pressure point schools teach crazy stuff. Like, if I hit you on your neck here, and then on your shoulder blade here, and then here in your gut, you're gonna pass out. You know, like absolute craziness is taught within the pressure point schools. Stuff that I think is mostly BS. And even on real pressure point things, like say a true pressure point in the arm that you might be able to create a little extra pain to like do a joint lock or something, they don't work on everybody. Some people, their pressure points are in slightly different places, so you did all this practice and you missed the pressure point, or they just have a high pain tolerance. I don't think it's fully useless, but I don't have the highest level of respect for pure pressure point practice. I'm actually going to put this one in the mostly trash area. Maybe not. Yeah, no, I'm putting it in mostly trash. The same way I view Aikido. Aikido has a few moves that are useful, a few techniques that I want to learn, but for the most part, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, and that's kind of how I view pressure points as well. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. A couple things can be useful, but it's just mostly it's not really going to be something I look at. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Muay Thai. It's Muay Thai, y'all. We already know where this is going, okay? Muay Thai is my other love. Punching, kicking, elbows, knees, arts of 8 limbs. Okay, we can even throw left way in there if we want to as well, which includes the headbutts. All right, Muay Thai has like an upper body version of grappling, aka the clinch in there too. It can't get more core than that. Okay, average Muay Thai practitioner who trains seriously can beat up most people. Okay, I hate to say this, but you get a guy doing Muay Thai for 1 year, you toss him into a guy who's doing karate for 5 years. I'm probably I might give that to the Muay Thai guy. And again, it's not that karate and all these other systems, Baji Quan, aren't good. It's just the training method. Muay Thai only focuses on pressure testing and drilling things against fully resisting opponents. They're drilling specifically only for the fighting. And a lot of systems that have techniques that can match, that might be able to match Muay Thai, they're just not drilling on average on a comparable level. So I got to put Muay Thai up top. Very, very easy core-based systems choice. Next one, ninjutsu. Okay. Another love-hate relationship. This one annoys me because I'm a firm believer that pretty much all ninjutsu being taught right now is the foundation for the most part. I think it might be founded somewhat, at least partially, on a lie. The only person I know who really claims, I can't remember his name, he's the old Japanese guy, I think he has purple hair right now, who claims to be a true descendant of one of the old ninja clans. I've seen the training of his people on the old TV show, I think it was Human Weapon or whatever, and I was not impressed at all. I've seen people who train to teach ninjutsu, large numbers of it, BS. And for the most part, you see these guys teaching ninjutsu, and they're out here using ninja outfits, talking about how they're ninjas, and I'm like, real ninjas didn't even dress in the black outfits. That was made up later. So I know your entire system is based on something that's not real. There's so much of that. That being said, a lot of the guys who are teaching ninjutsu, even if I don't believe it comes from maybe the most legitimate place or legitimate history, they do have real martial art foundations in some of the techniques that they're teaching. So what they're teaching isn't total garbage all the time. I wouldn't put it on the same level as I'd say this, Aikido or pressure point stuff, because I do know some guys who train in ninjutsu who actually know some legit stuff. They do know some legit things. There are techniques in there that are useful, even though I think the foundations of a lot of those systems are based on a lot of untruths. So for that reason, I'm going to put it in the support specialty systems area. I don't know almost any ninjutsu schools that pressure test. They're all fully, my system's too dangerous to pressure test, so I can't spar you with it kind of vibe, which I consider to be mostly a BS thing to say. That being said, like I said, there are some useful techniques. If you mix it with somebody who actually understands one of the core base systems, they might be able to make a lot of that stuff work. So for that reason, I'll put it in the support specialty systems. Not totally useless. There are good things if you learn it. If you're doing ninjutsu, I'm not hating on it. There are some things that you can learn and become very skilled at from it. But I'm happy putting it in the third tier. Okay, let's go to the next one. All right, now we have Sambo, a Russian martial art. made relatively well-known due to Khabib Nurmagomedov in the UFC. And now all these other Dagestani fighters coming out in MMA, demolishing people. A lot of Sambo background there. Sambo is a mix of a multitude of martial arts that was brought together to create this competition format. It involves grappling. You know, they do a lot of grappling, and it involves a lot of judo-type throws. You see them wearing a gi as well as the punching and kicking. You see a lot in kickboxing. It's an extremely well-rounded art form, similar to Kudo Karate, but I would actually say their average practitioner is significantly more skilled. I've actually taken some Sambo classes back in America, and one thing I love about it is it always incorporates the ideal of being able to punch. So imagine I'm learning wrestling techniques or takedown techniques, and instead of necessarily always going for the jiu-jitsu finish, you get them into a position, they're stuck, and I remember asking the instructor, I was like, what do we do from here? And he's like, you punch him in the face. I was like, oh. And we just start, simulating the punches. And so it's a very, very aggressive system. And again, it's taught specifically with the thought process of training people to compete or to truly fight. And it's all pressure tested consistently at an extremely high level of average competitor. So I'm going to put Sambo up here toward the top. Actually, I remember earlier in this video I said wrestling might be like the number one on average competitor level, but there's a chance the actual answer might be Sambo. Like if I was to actually do a tier list on average, on the average skill level of every martial art, who has the highest average skill level, Sambo and wrestling would probably be near the top there. Definitely a core or base martial arts system, hands down. Next, I have Savate. Savate. Another martial art that I think is extremely underrated. French kickboxing. It's one way to look at it. You have a system where you have to at least throw, I believe, 6 kicks minimum. But then there's also a lot of punching and boxing involved. A lot of very interesting footwork. A lot of very stylized and fancy kicks. There's a couple different styles of Savate out there, but for the most part, Savate has a competition system that allows full contact, similar to like an old American kickboxing. And I've seen Savate guys spar Muay Thai guys with some adjustment rules to get rid of the clinch, but they do relatively well. I think Savate's a great system. It teaches what it promises it's going to teach. Savate people have a good understanding of pressure. Again, I'm going to put that up here in the core-based martial arts systems. All right. I have a surprisingly large amount of core-based systems. I thought that would be the smallest group, but it's not. I think because of my experience in combat sports, I just happen to have a lot of experience with systems I would consider core and base systems. And when it comes to the other systems being used, I'm not separating them. Like I could have 20 different versions of karate on here, but I'm not doing that. So it's all marked as one. Wow, I'm just surprised at how many systems are getting ranked this high. So the next one I have on here, Shaolin Kung Fu. I'm going to be honest with you. When I put Shaolin Kung Fu on here, I don't remember if I meant Shaolin Kung Fu from like the Shaolin Temple, or if I was using it as like an overall Kung Fu statement on just Kung Fu in general, which are two very, very different things. Shaolin Kung Fu, as it's taught at like the temple, suffers from a huge lack of pressure testing, drilling, and sparring, but their athleticism is at such another level that the average person at the Shaolin Temple, the average monk, could kill a lot of other people just because of that alone. And so I'd have to put it in the core-based systems. But then you also have a lot of Kung Fu schools out in the rest of the world that are total trash. And I don't remember what I meant by that. But what I will say is when you look at Kung Fu in general, especially when I say Shaolin Kung Fu, look at a lot of the external animal styles. Surprisingly enough, a lot of these do have a lot of applicable techniques that if you drill properly and understand how to use, can be applied quite well. I have a friend who is trained in Eagle Claw Kung Fu, and he's also a Muay Thai fighter, to be fair, but he can apply it all. We can be sparring, he can grab you, put you in the locks from Eagle Claw, and I'll be all locked up. You know, he can apply this stuff. So I do know that it can work. But for the average person not living at Shaolin Temple, doing a hard style of Kung Fu usually would require you to train in a core base system, just because, again, Kung Fu usually deals with that lack of pressure testing issue you get with a lot of traditional martial arts. So again, I'm actually going to put it in the secondary auxiliary systems area, same as where I put karate, because it has a lot of applicable stuff within its forms and techniques, but because of the training styles, on average, the average practitioner is not that good at actually fighting. I know very, 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 very few Kung Fu people, including ones who say they do Shaolin Kung Fu, even though it's that can mean 1,000 different things, that, are not good at fighting at all, unless they've done another martial art, and then all of a sudden they can use some of the stuff. So again, secondary auxiliary system is where I put Shaolin Kung Fu, because I believe if they're actually drilling it and training it, the way Muay Thai and boxing drill and train their techniques for combat, then their stuff would work. Shuai Jiao. Shuai Jiao is a Chinese wrestling system. I believe it might be the oldest martial art in the world. I'm not sure. It's up there. I believe, as old as boxing and wrestling. It's older than the Shaolin Temple. It's, like I said, just Chinese wrestling. You have, the jacket outfit, very similar to judo. I think Wei Li trains it, I believe. These guys, very good. I've seen them compete. I've seen them train. Like I said, it'll look similar to judo in the beginning, but it's a very, very effective martial arts system. And if it's a wrestling / judo kind of hybrid that competes, which it does, it competes, you got to put it up here with the core systems as well. Yeah, definitely here as a core system. Next on the list is Systema, another Russian martial art, but very much unlike Sambo, which took a lot of proven martial arts and put them together. Systema decided to have a guy stare at a snake or some water and pretend to move like it and do some crazy kung fu-y weird stuff. Systema is one of those martial arts where I see it, I watch it, and I have never been convinced pretty much any of it works. It's like you watch a guy get punched who thinks he can turn himself into water and wave it off. It's just this weird, very hard to understand thing. And I understand maybe it gets a bad rap because of what's seen online. But I just have never, ever seen a Systema person who I've taken seriously. I'm sorry. If you train Systema and you think it's a very serious martial art, and you would like to maybe come on here, talk to me about it, we can have that conversation. Maybe enlighten me on the martial arts system. But as far as I'm aware, I would say 99.9% of the stuff I've seen Systema guys do is BS, not just physical BS, but almost to the point of chi magic BS. I'm not a fan of Systema at all. So we're putting Systema easily into the mostly trash section, the opposite of Sambo. It went from Sambo, super good martial art, one of the top 2 in my opinion, to Systema on the bottom. Huge difference. Next one on here, Tai Chi. Interesting. So Tai Chi is an interesting martial art here. A lot of people on here are probably going to assume I'm going to put Tai Chi in mostly trash, but I'm definitely not. Tai Chi has a lot of grappling applications if you know how to do it. I mean a large number of grappling applications just at a super slow motion. No one who trains Tai Chi like Tai Chi is trained is going to be able to fight. But if you get a wrestler to learn Tai Chi and adapt it, I bet you they could turn around and use some of this stuff. And when I look at average pure Tai Chi practitioners that can actually fight, it's going to be less than 1%. But I do think there's like a lot of decent actual applications within the movements. So I don't want to put it in mostly trash, because when I look at mostly trash, I look at a martial art that is telling you it's going to teach you to defend yourself, for one, and then it doesn't. And then also has techniques that are mostly garbage, even if used, are like you can't fix it. Like a lot of Aikido techniques, I don't think you can fix, even if you had the ability to pressure test it more. I just don't think it's feasible. Tai Chi, I think, is different. Tai Chi, for one, does not claim that it's going to teach you to have masterful self-defense or fighting skills. It doesn't claim that. So it doesn't have that, that going against it. Simultaneously, I do think that if you pressure tested and trained it faster, resisting opponent and all those things, that there are actual moves in Tai Chi that you could actually make work. I've used a few. In clinch, and I've used a few in jiu-jitsu, not against another white belt, not super skilled person, but I was able to land it. And so for that reason, I'm putting Tai Chi in the support and specialty system. So yeah, it'd be different. If Tai Chi was going around telling everybody that you'd be a master of self-defense, I felt that they were lying about everything, I might move them down. But they do what they promise. They promise to just help you be healthy. Unlike Systema, which tells you it's going to teach you to move like water and defend yourself, which is total garbage. Okay. Next, International Taekwondo Federation. Okay, so Taekwondo. That's the IT, not the WTF? Oh, okay, so I put we're going to put both general groups of Taekwondo together. You have the South Korean version, WTF, and the ITF, with General Choi's group. They're both relatively different, but they both have a high reliance on kicks and flashy movements. I will say this, a lot of people who train American karate in America actually train an offshoot of this version of a version of Taekwondo. It was just called karate for marketing reasons. And to be fair, there's a lot of good stuff in there. I mean, Taekwondo's forms come from Shotokan karate for the most part, just slightly adjusted and moved out, but a lot of the techniques and applications are still there. Deals with a lot of the same issues karate has when it comes to lack of pressure testing and proper drilling. But again, has its own style of competition, and it has a decent number of people who've been able to use it in full contact as well. I think this is the same level as karate. I can't reasonably put this any lower than I put karate. So I'm going to put it right there in secondary and auxiliary systems. Next, after that, Wing Chun. Wing Chun. Okay. So, this is a tough one for me. I love Wing Chun. I think there's a lot of applicable stuff in Wing Chun. I use Wing Chun right now in my Muay Thai, especially in my sparring. And I have a friend, Delano, who uses Wing Chun on a regular as a core part of his Muay Thai. And he's very, very, very good at it. It has some obvious weaknesses within Wing Chun that kind of move it away from being able to be a base system. It's a little too niche, too specialty in its ideal of center line strikes almost exclusively. And its footwork leaves a lot to be desired. That being said, if you mix it with just a little bit of a core-based system, you can use a lot from the Wing Chun. As a matter of fact, one of my old Muay Thai instructors, he's not trained in Wing Chun, but he actually Wing Chun punches all the time, and he was like a glory fighter, like top level. So I'm definitely going to put Wing Chun as a secondary auxiliary system. Next, our last one, because this Baji Quan is a secondary, and this one is an accident. Right here, we have this guy from Jackie Chan Adventures cartoon series, just to symbolize all the Chi Masters out there. Okay, and by Chi Masters, I'm not talking about internal. I mean the guys who believe that they can shoot out Kamehameha waves with their arms, okay? Who summon the powers of Goku and Vegeta when they do their martial arts. Those who summon the power of George Dillman into their soul when they are teaching their martial arts. Okay, that is who I'm talking about. Those who believe in the no-touch knockouts, the death touch, and the ability to wooga booga 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 on somebody and knock them out. Guys, if it is real, if you can really knock someone out with chi powers, please find me. I will be your student. I will apologize to the world. I will bow in front of you like a king. If you can show me a way to make chi powers work, you would make all of my childhood dreams come true. I would quit I would never work again. I would just be a martial artist doing chi powers. Okay? I wish. But as it is right now, it's total garbage. Doesn't exist. I've never seen a chi person be able to cheat anybody who doesn't already believe in chi magic. Okay? It's total garbage, total BS. Don't believe in that crap. Okay? Stay away from it. Alright. So, with that being said, okay, we have completed our tier list. We have way more core-based systems than I thought. There are more core-based systems than anything else. That is kind of crazy to me. I do want to say, if you got this far, please remember to watch the original video first to understand how I'm viewing these martial arts systems. Because if your martial arts system is scored low, especially if it's just scored in secondary, that's not really a hate on the system itself. It's more hate on your training methods. And for specialty systems, for some of them, like Baiji Quan and Hung Ga, it's still a training method thing. It's just so universal, it's hard to see any difference, right? So don't hate on it. I respect all the martial arts as having a lot of value in them to the point where I would learn every martial art up to that support and specialty system. I would take time out of my day to go learn it. I do think there's value in it. The only ones that I think, like the only ones I would ignore really are the mostly trash systems. If I do Aikido, it's for fun. Like, I have no expectation of becoming a better fighter from it. Like, the only ones, like, that I would avoid are the trash systems. So, other than that, guys, I hope you appreciated this list. I hope no one's offended by this list. Again, no matter where you are on this list, I respect you as a martial arts system in general. And if you do happen to be in the mostly trash area and you disagree, fight me. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. But really, if you want to demonstrate how it works, if you want to prove that your system is usable, if we can find a way in which to meet up, I'm in Okinawa right now, but in the future I'll be back in America. I'm down to do that. I'm down to do it. So, again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want to see more videos like this or practical applications of technique, which is the other thing that I do, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I will see you all next time. Peace.